You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, man, we're in the week after the draft here now, and it just I don't know how to feel. I'm excited that we got to see what the draft did, but yet we got this whole 2 months of nothing. It kind of feels like, so it's just kind of I'm ready for football. But so I'm kind of with you. I started watching the 2020 class today, and some of those wide receivers, man, you got me on them. I'm excited about that class. But man, how are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. I got a friend visiting that I haven't seen for a long time this weekend, and it looks like it's just going to be absolutely horrible weather. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how close you are to the Quad Cities or hear anything about that, but the Mississippi River is looking like it's going to have some historic flooding. So thinking about those people affected by that in my hometown. But other than that, doing pretty well. Really enjoyed the Game of Thrones episode this weekend. Avengers Endgame was good. I got to spend some of your birthday with you yesterday, so I'm very important in that way. And, the NFL draft, it's fun. I'm excited to see. I mean, it worked out pretty well. Definitely puts you in a better mood when you can feel good about 99% of what happened. The only way, it's not binary, so I'm not going to say good or bad. It's on a scale. But yeah, no, feeling good and excited to talk some more draft today, but as it pertains to the AFC West.
Oh yeah, man, that's going to be a fun talk. Looking at these drafts, seeing how the Gruden-Mayock pairing was able to do in their first year together. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on their draft. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course you can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. If you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where Building the Broncos along with Huddle Up are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, Nick, like I said, we had the first Mike Mayock draft, and I think it's very interesting to see a guy go from being the analyst on TV that everybody really loves to listen to. I don't know who's your favorite analyst on TV to listen to when it comes to the draft.
For me, man, I really do like Daniel Jeremiah, but I think I'm a little bit biased there because we've had a few interactions on Twitter and got a chance to talk with him at the Missouri Pro Day. So, and even if you don't agree with him, you got to tip your cap to Mel Kiper, because he kind of opened the door for this kind of work. And just doing that and creating this interest and the work he's done is, even if you don't agree with 100% of what he says, he's definitely an icon in the industry. So, but if I had to pick, if I could replace Carl with a new co-host, I'm just kidding, Carl, you're safe. It'd probably be Daniel Jeremiah. I like his vibe. I like his takes. Seems very personable, and just enjoy him. Yeah.
I think it kind of depends on which round for me. I really actually like McShay when it comes to the later rounds. He seems to actually know the players and what they're good at, what they're not good at. Mel Kiper is kind of the guy. He knows the first round picks. He knows some of the background. He knows he's got all of his inside sources, those kind of things. But McShay's that guy. You can tell he's a film grinder when it comes to wanting to look at prospects. So I've always appreciated that about him. I don't always agree with them, obviously. I mean, we don't agree with any of them. We don't agree with each other on some of these prospects. So, I mean, it happens that way. It's part of the subjectiveness of what we do. But I kind of like listening to him. I liked listening to Mayock every once in a while. I mean,
Mayock's good.
Yeah, he's good. I think
Louis Riddick too. That's one that I really enjoy the work he's done on ESPN since he's kind of started taking over that mantle.
Right. Yeah. I guess with Mayock, a little bit here at the end, he was starting to get bigger and to a point where he was becoming more of a celebrity than just a guy up there just loving talking football. I don't know if you got that vibe, but that was kind of a little bit me. I loved him a few years ago, and he started getting a little bit bigger for his britches. I'm not trying to say he wasn't still good, just that there's a little bit more trying to play towards the camera.
I mean, it's your media, you're not just an analyst, he's an entertainer in that regard. So, but at the same time, he comes off a little bit gruff, that little 5 o'clock shadow that he has going all the time now in that Raider way, a little bit more gruff. Maybe it's the Raider stuff going on there for me, but I like Mac. I don't absolutely love him, but right. You can tell there's times where you see not to call out Todd McShay, I met him at the Missouri Pro Day as well, but is he actually watching every single one of these guys, or is he has a staff under him that's kind of giving him some notes? I don't have that question about Mayock. He was doing the work. So I got to respect that. Right.
Well, he had his first draft, had 3 first-round picks, had another early second-round pick, so 4 really pretty valuable picks in this draft. And he started off probably the first big surprise of the draft. I think the first 3 picks pretty much went how a lot of people thought. Murray, Bosa, and Williams. I think the Raiders were hoping Williams would fall to them, but he didn't. And so then they bring the first surprise and taken Clelin Ferrell of Clemson. And I found it very interesting. They mentioned this a couple times on the broadcast that the Clemson, I think it was, which game was it? The semi
against Notre Dame.
Was it Notre Dame? Okay, it might have been them. Was the first game that Mike Mayock was kind of that actual in position to – was that right after he got hired?
That makes sense time-wise because you have that break between the regular season and the bowl games. So that would make sense.
And so his first game is Clemson, and then he goes and takes 3 players from Clemson because, well, they dominated that game. Then, of course, they dominated against Alabama. And so he starts off taking Clelin Ferrell, a guy that I know he was in your 40s on your big board. Now, that was given more because he was a better fit as a 4-3 defensive end than a 3-4 outside linebacker. But, I mean, what do you think of this first pick? It was a surprise to a lot of people. Most people didn't think he was going to go until the teens or early 20s, and here he is at pick 4.
Yeah, for me, I think talent-wise, this is a bit of a reach. I mean, if they'd have taken him at, traded back and taken him anywhere from 10 to 18, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I don't think he is the most explosive or twitched up pass rusher, but he is very technical with his hands. And I mean, he absolutely took it to Jonah Williams in the national championship game. So I think maybe there's a little bit of a case of, overexposure leads to some guys starting to drip down a little bit of the board where, the next big new thing is always better. Right, just over, you hear it with Drew Lock and everything too. But I don't hate the pick. I do think it was a pretty solid reach, but they're going for culture guys, to an nth degree. They're going for the types that really can change a team. And while Christian Wilkins was the leader of that defense, Clelin Ferrell was right up there with him, talked about as being a very hard worker, very intelligent, very driven young man. So it's really just comes down to being more of a culture fit for me. And they were desperate for edge rusher. They honestly, if I were them, I probably would have done what I could to move up to number 2 and get Nick Bosa personally. Cause you have 2 first-round picks here, and let's say you package 4 and even 27 and you end up with Nick Bosa. That's better to me, but who am I to judge, I guess. But yeah, I don't hate it too much. I did like Clelin Ferrell a lot more his season last year compared to this year. But overall, he's going to be a good player. Don't ever see him as a 1A level pass rusher, if that makes sense. He'd be better in tandem with a better pass rusher opposite him. But, with his really good usage in the run game, I think he's a 3-down player and a really good fit for a 4-3 defense. I don't think it's a horrible pick. I just think it's a little bit early. But when you put in the positional value, how badly they needed pass rush, the high floor, and the character culture fit that Gruden really seems to be going for, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think Eric was the one that kept always saying that he's a better Robin than a Batman when it comes to the pass rushing duo. And when you're looking for that one, I mean, for the Broncos, they have the perfect Batman and Robin right now on their team. Of course, you got Von Miller as the true Batman, and Bradley Chubb coming on as that Robin that maybe could even turn into a Batman as he progresses in his career. But it is a little bit interesting just to pass on guys like Josh Allen. A lot of people had him as that top 5 pick kind of guy. I know you were one that had him a little bit lower. Ed Oliver's another one that a lot of people kind of started saying he's going to go a little bit higher than some think. Devin White, and the fact that, I mean, they still need that off-ball linebacker type. And so there's some other ways they could have gone with this pick. I don't completely fault him. I understand it was a reach, but really after Nick Bosa, the next group of pass rushers, they were all pretty closely rated in my book, and just kind of more of a preference. Do you want a guy with power? Do you want a guy with bend ability? What kind of pass rusher do you want? I mean, Josh Allen's kind of that guy that can do a little bit of everything, but he's still learning the position. Clelin Ferrell's more that power guy that can really overpower people. I mean, Brian Burns more that bender around the edge. So again, I mean, it's just a preference thing, and like you said, maybe a little bit of a culture thing for them to get a guy that they feel like can be a real leader in their locker room. Well, then that takes us to one
comment there for me is, we mentioned I always hate losing to the Raiders, but the fact that the Broncos choked that game against the Raiders week 16 kept them from picking number 2 and taking Nick Bosa, and they didn't even get Quinnen Williams. So, it's bittersweet, but maybe in the long term that Broncos loss ends up being a franchise victory because it keeps better players from the Raiders.
Yeah, there's a huge drop off after those first 2 defenders.
I mean, they were the all-pro guys on my board,
Right.
So
right, you didn't really question too much of what kind of player they're going to turn into. I mean, we'll see how their careers play out, obviously, and maybe one of these other guys comes into something else. But those guys had the fewest question marks really about their game coming in, and so Raiders, their first pick with Mayock at the helm, Clelin Ferrell of Clemson, and I really do think because he went to those playoff games, that obviously had to play a pretty big picture or role in the way that they decided to draft. Because, I mean, you look at, they had Clemson pick here. We're going to talk about Josh Jacobs here in just a second. And then, again, Trayvon Mullen in the second round, Hunter Renfrow in the fifth round. I heard the joke that Bill Belichick threw his computer when he saw that Hunter Renfrow wasn't going to be a Patriot.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
But no, I mean, it seems like that game had a lot of influence on the kind of players that they went after and going for some of these big school players. But moving on here, then they decided to go find their true number 1 running back, first running back off the board, Josh Jacobs of Alabama. And I mean, you and I, we've talked a lot on this show about running back value, especially in the first round. And just it doesn't seem like that's a place you really want to go for running back. But there was a huge hole for them. And I think for the most part, a lot of people pretty much had Josh Jacobs across the board as the top running back in this draft. So, I mean, are you okay with this at pick number 24, especially having 3 first-round picks?
Personally, I would not go this way, but they were desperate for a running back. But I don't know why you don't go out and just, pay maybe a TJ Yeldon or something and then get a guy. They had plenty of picks round 4. You probably could have gotten a running back around there. But, Josh Jacobs is a complete back. He shows the ability to run between the tackles, outside the tackles. His pass blocking when he wants to is really pretty solid, and he's a solid receiver. So I get needing that, but I feel like as a team that's very much, building up for the future, this is a very win now type of move. So I just don't love taking a running back here. I feel like if you're a team like the Patriots, where you think maybe you're Sony Michel away from being a Super Bowl contender, that makes sense to me. But for a team that seems as far away as the Raiders, I don't love it at all. But this is a pick. I mean, everybody knew this was a pick that the Raiders were very much leaning into here late in the first round. So, and even in a terrible class, I mean, this is not a good running back class. I mean, as much as David Montgomery is probably going to be solid, Miles Sanders, the Henderson, there's some guys here, but sandwiched between last year's class, 2017's class, or 2017's class, and what looks to be a really, really good 2020 class. It's just, I don't think it's playing the draft game the right way.
Right. Personally, if I was them, I would have taken, I think, Montez Sweat.
He went a pick before.
No, he went pick 26.
And oh yeah, okay, never mind. I'm thinking the next pick.
Right.
Excuse me, carry on. Okay, I got you.
If I'm them, I would have doubled up on pass rusher.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
They were that bad at getting after the quarterback. And if there's a guy here, especially in the 20s, that I think can really turn into a true star, because Montez Sweat, he has that athleticism. I mean, ran that 4.4 140. He's a guy that really could turn into a star. He didn't always show it in college, obviously. He had some moments where he just seemed to disappear, and a lot of times his his other teammate Jeffrey Simmons kind of overshadowed him. But for here in the 20s, that's a chance I'm willing to take. Where running back, it is kind of a dime a dozen. You can find a guy that's, look at the Broncos. They're starting running back, Pro Bowl running back, undrafted. Broncos, again, their sixth-round pick clear back in the 90s turned into a Hall of Fame player. And I'm not saying that every one of those kind of players turns into that, but it just seems like that's a position that you can build up in later rounds and still find a pretty good player, where pass rusher, you're not going to find a great pass rusher past probably second, third round very often.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Maybe a guy like DeAndre Baker, because they really need a lot of help on that defense. But I agree with you. I think Montez Sweat was the guy that I would have gone with there as well. So good call. And then the next pick, moving on there, they took Jonathan Abram, and all reports are they were ready to take Montez Sweat at pick 27. And the Redskins, probably one of the teams that had the best drafts of any team, which very un-Redskins like of them. But they ended up taking Jonathan Abram, the other Mississippi State player, or another Mississippi State player, the third one drafted in the first round from this defense. Who did Mississippi State lose to in the bowl game again?
Seems like, was it Iowa State?
Oh my gosh! Wash your mouth out with soap. Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I haven't had too many people to tease today, so I had to get that one in there.
That's fair. That's fair. You need to go see your daughter after this or something. Jonathan Abram, Mississippi State. Again, another culture guy. He's kind of reminds me of more of an old school linebacker. There are times where he just doesn't show the best instincts in space, specifically with coverage. Did not have many plays on the ball in college. But if you're looking for a guy that's going to be an enforcer coming down, if you're trying to throw quick passes to the flats or over the middle, Jonathan Abram is one who's going to come down and look to not only dislodge the ball, but put your guy on the sideline. I don't think he's intentionally trying to hurt anybody, but this is the guy who last year during Mississippi State's spring game, he was hitting so hard they actually canceled the spring game. Like, okay, we're done. Somebody's going to get hurt. Wrap it up, guys. Jonathan Abram, what the heck are you doing? So this is a fiery guy, and talking with him, a lot of intensity, a lot of passion. So I don't love the tape as far as pick 27 overall, but as far as, again, building a base, building a culture, bringing a mentality to a team overall, I think that pick makes a lot of sense. And he screams a Gruden type of player and an Oakland Raider from that point of view.
I guess, and maybe this is a little bit of probably, hearing some of the reports of DeAndre Baker, I guess maybe this is not a good culture fit, but he's a guy that I thought was always very physical, that was kind of a tone setter, not quite to the level of Aqib Talib, but still along some of that lines where this guy loves to come in there and hit, could fit a real position of need for them. And it really is for the Raiders. One draft was not going to correct everything. I had to laugh a little bit when Mel Kiper was going, after this draft, I think the Oakland Raiders win the AFC West. And I'm just going, are you kidding? What? They still have so many holes on this team, even after having all these draft picks and a bunch of money this offseason. It's just they're having to, like you said, change their entire culture to fit John Gruden. And, it's why they even traded some premier players from their team, which I thought were still actually probably better fits for their culture. But, what did Khalil Mack do to tick him off? Other than just what money that he deserved. I don't know. But anyway.
It had to do with the agent. I think things got pretty serious between the agent and Gruden. Like ugly.
And that's possible. We hear about that happening throughout the NFL. Broncos ran into that with Chris Harris Jr. The Broncos ran into that with Von Miller as well. It's not the end-all be-all if you argue with the agent that things are going to completely fall apart. But it does happen sometimes. So, I guess I could see that. And if they got 2 first-round picks out of it, I guess that's the best you can do. But none of these players compare even remotely close to what Khalil Mack brought to your organization.
Yeah. You're talking about one of the top 3 best defensive players in football. So they still get a first-round pick next year. Maybe they'll package them and go get a quarterback, and Khalil Mack will go off to the Bears and maybe right off into ineptitude. So we'll see how this does play out. But, you're moving on from Mack and Amari Cooper. Not the best. Not the best. But again, you got to rebuild, and I respect them if they are going to be patient with this rebuild. I still hate them because they're the goddamn Raiders. But still, this is a team that's looking to rebuild. It's going to be a few years. The AFC West is just totally incredibly top-heavy right now. The two of the best three teams in the AFC at the top. Sorry, Broncos, you're not one of those teams right now. But I don't hate it. And talking about cornerback here, I do really like the upside here of this pick, this 8th overall pick in the second round. They took Trayvon Mullen, who was the MVP of the national championship game from Clemson. And I'm curious about your thoughts about the long, lengthy cornerback.
Well, it's one of those, again, I think because their first sight of Trayvon Mullen was him going out there and just absolutely balling on the field. If you look at his tape throughout the season, you see a lot of inconsistency in his play. You see a guy that, I mean, he can come up and make some plays, but there's still a lot of times where he's getting beat up. I like the player. I like the upside, like you said. I just had him more as a kind of late second, early third round value. And I think he's going to be a starter for them. I just think he's a guy that you can definitely get beat on the field, at least right now. I don't think he's going to be NFL ready day one. I think teams are really going to pick on him and have a pretty good, especially against him as a rookie. I mean, I don't know. I go back and forth on him because you do see the good. You see those games where he really does dominate, but then you just see so many games where he just, if he didn't have that defensive line, you wonder how much he would really look bad on tape. And so it's kind of an, egg or chicken situation here. Who's helping who the most? Yeah.
I mean, I think he was the number one rated cornerback recruit in his year. I don't really follow recruiting that closely, being a Hawkeye fan. That's really not the point of the year where they win, although they've been doing better there. But anyway, Mullen, athletic. You can see him. He has some ball skills. Not always the most physical, but with the length and the fluidity he has at his size, there's definitely something to be had there. I think this is a fine range for him. You're banking on some of those tools still developing and maybe hopefully a little bit more mentality. But I think, he's got a chance to be a true boundary corner. I just wish he was a little bit better with that punch and staying in phase off press. But overall, I can't hate it, but we got to keep moving here. Max Crosby the Raiders don't pick again until the day 3 of the draft, but they had a fair amount of day 3 picks. And I'll just read off, the 4th round picks here because they had 4 of them. And I like all 3 of these guys. Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan, very athletic edge rusher. Isaiah Johnson from Houston, probably one of the most athletic defensive backs ever at the combine. And then Foster Moreau, a tight end from LSU, obviously the Broncos walked out with Noah Fant. They didn't really need a tight end after that, but I really liked Foster Moreau. So I think all three of these guys for round 4 are pretty good gets.
Yeah, I'll just talk about one here. Isaiah Johnson was one that I was really hoping for the Broncos as kind of that cornerback that you can kind of stick behind everybody else, have him be a special teams guy early on, but try to build him up because, you look at that athletic profile and you're going, man, if you get this guy going, he could really turn into something. So, you can't teach athleticism, but you can teach certain things and how to play cornerback. And I really I think that's one of the things I love most about our coaching staff right now is they are really known as teaching coaches. They are guys who have really developed a lot of people throughout years upon years in the NFL, college, all those kind of things. And so getting a guy like Isaiah Johnson that you could develop in that secondary, I thought that would have been a great thing for them. But unfortunately, the Raiders got him. We'll see if their coaches can develop this kid because right now he is about as raw as can be. I know you are a big Foster Moreau fan. You've talked about it on this show quite a bit that he was one of the best two-way tight ends that you thought were in this draft.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that he has the chance to be the thing is he has the athleticism and wasn't utilized in the Louisiana State offense, but you have that athleticism and the high-end blocking. So it's kind of a potential George Kittle situation. I don't think he ends up being George Kittle, but yeah, no, pretty darn good. And Isaiah Johnson, a lot of traits there, can be kind of high in the back pedal. I think he might end up having to move to safety because he can be a little bit stiff on tape, but for his size, that's not terrible. And then rounding out their day 3, they got Hunter Renfrow, the wide receiver from Clemson, and Quentin Bell, defensive end from Prairie View, which I'll be honest, I did not watch a single snap of Prairie View football for this year, so no comment on that. But Hunter Renfrow, you're not going to get a seam stretcher. You're not going to get a guy who's super dynamic after the catch, but darn it, he catches everything despite him having, I think, some of the smallest hands ever recorded for a wide receiver at the combine, which is pretty interesting considering how good his hands are.
He's one of the best, probably third down wide receivers in this entire draft. I mean, he's not going to go out there and get you a ton of touchdowns. He's not going to run away from a lot of people, but short area quickness, ability to understand defenses, and just to be one of the smarter players on the field. I mean, he has all of that, which is why everybody paired him with the Patriots, because that's exactly what they like in their wide receivers, especially for that slot position. And so I think he's going to be a great fit. I know Carr loves those short little passes. I think Hunter Renfrow could really be a high contributor early on. I mean, he's not going to go get out a ton of yards, but I think he can pick up a lot of extra first downs for them, making those tough catches in traffic.
Yeah, no, you are right there, and it doesn't really add a lot of speed to the offense. Doesn't really add much outside ability, but he's going to be very good. And we saw Derek Carr pepper the middle of the field with quick targets, so pretty good fit there. But we're going to take another quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Chargers draft.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we're back to talk about with one of my favorite drafts in this entire class, considering the volume of picks that the team had. I mean, I don't know if they made a single move. I think they just picked exactly where they ended up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But really, probably one of my favorite picks of the first round. And we talk about pass rush synergy, Jerry Tillery between Ingram and Bosa. Goodness gracious, I think the Chargers have a chance to be the best defense in the NFL next year, and Jerry Tillery just further adds to that.
Yeah, we'll see how much he develops in year one. Maybe year one he's not going to be that, but year 2, 3, he could really be a big-time monster there in the middle. I'm not saying he can't do some things here year one, but you always kind of expect rookies not to do as much as you would hope. But no, great pick, great need, great fit in value. I mean, just everything about this pick says this was – I mean, you just sit there and you wait for talent to come to you. So to get a talent like this at pick 28 – I had to laugh. I think we talked about it here a little bit. PFF did a two-round mock or a 3-round mock, and they had Jerry Tillery going to the Broncos at pick 10. And I know a lot of Bronco fans were like, oh, my gosh, this is so terrible. And I agree. He's not worth the 10th overall pick, but he's still a guy that's highly developing, has shown improvement throughout his college career, especially this last year. I mean, he just was one of the more dominating interior guys. So you add that again between their pass rushers, and it is. I mean, you can't double team them all, and probably Jerry Tillery is the guy that's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities to get into the backfield and that interior pressure on quarterbacks. I mean, Tom Brady has said it over and over again. That's what disrupts his game the most. It's not those edge rushers. He can step up. He can move around in the pocket a little bit. Those interior pass rushers are the ones that can really disrupt those pocket passers. And so adding that, perfect fit. I'm hate to say it, but Chargers, you did a good job.
Again, they did a good job again. I don't know what's going on over there. I mean, granted, the Chargers continually always, get hyped up and then fall back. But, I think this team, Phillip Rivers, it depends on if he can continue fighting off Father Time. But I really like this team. Adding Jerry Tillery along with Bosa and Ingram, I think gives them probably the best interior pass rush upside in the NFL right now. Maybe no, I think I'll go with them. I think that's the team with pass rush, and they're also very versatile and a little different too. And then they added literally, I mean, if you could think of a safety that complements Derwin James any better, if you built him in a factory, it'd be Nasir Adderley, right? Like he's like perfect for them. You're going to get Derwin more in the box, a little bit more physical, where Adderley can play free safety but come down and match up in the slot or even boundary. I think that Derwin had to play much more free safety last year because Adai was more of that strong safety. But now you can move them around, and they got much more versatile on the back end. They still need some linebacker help, high end linebacker help that is. But man, Adderley and Tillery is picking when you're picking 28th each round. That's freaking dynamic for where they were picking.
Well, you consider there was a lot of mock drafts heading up to the draft that thought Adderley would go round 1, that they thought he was maybe going to be the first safety off the board, and here he is late second round. And so, I mean, it's that great value. It's kind of like when the Broncos got Drew Lock and everybody said, oh, this guy's not going to make it out of the top 10, and then he's there in the second round. Well, you just take that talent and add it to your team. And again, when you fit need, value, it just screams this is such a good pick. And I hate to say that for the Chargers, and I hate that we're going to have to go against this for a lot of years because, like you said, you pair him with Derwin James, and they can just do so much on the back end of their defense that help out, especially those pass rushers. They're going to be able to, especially Derwin James coming up now, playing more in the box, those pass rushers getting there quickly. I feel sorry for teams. That really is going to be a very, very strong defense. I'm interested to see how they handle a little bit of the run game, because they do struggle a little bit up the middle going against the run game. Maybe some play action over the top. Their cornerback group isn't always the best at times. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries in that secondary. But beyond that, yeah, this is looking like a very, very strong unit that unfortunately we're going to have to play for a lot of years.
Yeah, then those two guys are day one impact players. So look out for the Chargers defense. I'm definitely going to be trying to pick them up in fantasy football. But the rest of the draft, not as good, but I do like it. Trey Pipkin's a guy I kind of watched, but Sioux Falls, it's kind of hard to get an idea of the talent there. Third round seems a little high, but we'll see where that goes. I really do like Drew Tranquill, linebacker from Notre Dame. I know that. I think he was one of your guys.
Yep,
honestly,
that is one of my boys. I loved him in coverage. He's got a lot of injury concerns, and so then going to one of the most injury-prone teams in the NFL, probably not the best fit. I don't know what they're doing with their training staff and some of their medical staff, but it has not been good. But no, Drew Tranquill, if he is healthy, he is a very good coverage linebacker. He's a little bit small, but he's got the speed and athleticism to keep up with a lot of guys. And I think, again, he's just one of those guys that's just beginning to scratch the surface of what he can bring in the NFL. And so good pick here in the fourth round. When they took him, I definitely let out a very audible, not happy set of words. So not my best moment, but I was not happy that they got him, because I was kind of hoping maybe for the Broncos he'd fall into that 5th, 6th round where they could get still a coverage linebacker to add to our roster.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot. We'll see if he can stay healthy, but fun player and absolutely a gorgeous looking person. Also, I know that was something that we talked about when we talked about the Senior Bowl. But Easton Stick in the 5th round, not going to lie, very confusing pick for me. Don't think he has the arm talent. Don't think he's going to be a guy. Hopefully there's not many North Dakota State fans on here listening, because they are very passionate about that team. Had an unfortunate chance to see that when they came into Iowa City and beat Iowa a few years ago. No, nothing but respect. I think that was a year after Wentz went in the number 2 overall pick. But I don't really love the pick there. I think that's I would have taken Brett Ripien over him. No question about it.
I was just about ready to say that. I think the Broncos got a better quarterback as an undrafted quarterback than them picking him in here in the 5th round.
Although Easton Stick's 3-cone is something it's a sight to behold. Like it's good wide receiver range. Did you see his 3-cone?
I did. And maybe he's the guy that you run those quarterback option plays.
He's a slot receiver.
And see him. I don't see how he's going to stick at quarterback. I just don't see the arm talent to be able to be a good backup in that kind of sense. I know some people are talking about that this could be the end of Cardell Jones there in San Diego, or I guess LA now. And I don't think he's that kind of quarterback that takes his spot.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Cardell Jones is anything special, but Easton Stick has a long ways to go before I would really trust him to be a backup quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I pulled up Easton Stick here and his mock draftable, and I switched his position from quarterback to wide receiver. And the player he compares most to, actually very similarly, Cooper Kupp, the slot receiver for the other Los Angeles team. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But I don't know if he has the arm talent, but he's very, very unique athlete. Even for wide receivers, his agilities are insane. Against all wide receivers ever for the combine, 92nd percentile 3-cone, 88th percentile 20-yard shuttle. So something interesting there, right? Not a great 4.62, but still at a slot. I was thinking, honestly, the Patriots might take him, so we'll see. And the next pick, Emeka Ebula from Houston, he plays the 3-4, kind of an edge rusher, but it's kind of that hybrid edge where they play some 3-man fronts, some 3-3-5s, or kind of off ball. I think he'll probably be more of an off ball player going forward, but he has some versatility there. And then another player, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to look at. Another 7th round pick I didn't see, Cortez Broughton from Cincinnati, defensive tackle. Any thoughts on either of those two guys, or you want to move on to the yucky Chiefs?
Let's just move on to the yucky Chiefs, because I'm with you. I didn't really watch those two a whole lot. And those late round picks, you're hoping that they're special teams players that maybe can make the roster or be your practice squad players that you hope to develop as time goes on. So I don't think they're going to be anything special for them this year. Right now, this draft, it's looking like, if I had to name 3 players, Tillery, Adderley, and Tranquil will be the three guys I think can make a real impact this season for him.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about the Chiefs here, but first, a quick break.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right. Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler, back for the Building the Broncos podcast, wrapping up the AFC West overview here. And we're going to finish with the team that finished first in the division last year, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs do not have a first-round pick because they ended up trading for Frank Clark. And I'm curious, I mean, you got to look at that as part of the draft class. What are your thoughts on the Frank Clark trade?
I mean, it's if you're looking for a player that fits their system and what they really needed from that edge, especially after losing Justin Houston, losing what's his name?
They lost D Ford.
D Ford, yes, D Ford. There you go. I mean, they needed some more help. They had a couple guys they took in the last couple drafts, but neither of them were really showing a ton of talent that I would say. And so this, I mean, the trade made sense, but it's one of those. Part of me is going, I would have rather just paid D Ford and kept my first round pick and added another pass rusher. I mean, you trade up. I mean, a perfect fit for them would have been a Montez Sweat, which I know that was a couple picks before they would have actually made their pick, but it wouldn't have taken too much to trade up. Say you see him falling to go get to the Baltimore Ravens spot, or even trade with the Raiders or the Texans. I mean, honestly, I think the Texans, they got caught a little bit flat-footed, in my opinion, when Andre Dillard went the pick before him, when the Eagles traded up before him. And so then all of a sudden they had to go to the next offensive tackle just because they had such a huge need for it, where Titus Howard, I don't think any of us really had him that high. But they just kind of reached a little bit there. But I guess for me, that's the way I would have rather gone if I'm the Chiefs. I know D Ford's not the perfect fit, but I think Montez Sweat would have been a very nice fit for him. But again, I mean, I can't fault them. They got a very good defensive end. I do think that the timing is terrible when you look at what happened with Tyreek Hill and you add another guy that has a domestic violence charge against him. I mean, that's not their fault that Tyreek Hill decided to go and do all this crazy stuff, but it still kind of gives you this.
Let's not undersell it. Crazy is the wrong word. Vile. Like
yes.
that's just. I'm not going to take a social stance here, but I mean, goodbye as far as I'm concerned. You know, you put yourself in that situation, taking in the 5th round, knowing what you knew about him, and you know, here you are. This is the reason you got him in the 5th, despite that. But this is what happens. So if this turns out, I mean, I guess we'll get another investigation here, but goodbye. You know, like I can't. Even if it was a Bronco, you can't. There's stuff more important than football, which is crazy. Don't let my fiance hear me say that. You know, she'd ask me to do some stuff with her when I could be watching football. But just yikes. And I think you can see what the Chiefs are thinking about the future of Hill when they took Mecole Hardman.
Right, yeah, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But I'm with you. I mean, if he was on the Broncos, I would be screaming for him to be cut. I would be upset that they've taken this long. Considering, I mean, I know he hasn't been charged or anything like that, and I've had some people. I mean, I live in Chiefs country, so I'm surrounded by Chiefs fans. I mean, I love most of them, but sometimes it does seem to get in the way of you care more about your football team, the overall talent, than you do about the people that are there and the example that they're setting. You know, I'm thinking of my daughter. I don't want my team to have that kind of kid on my team. I don't want my daughter watching me watch this kid and cheer him on. And I mean, there's just a lot of things going on there that I'm thinking about with that picture with him and listening to the audio, especially. I mean, that's pretty damning evidence right there, right? I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that other than video of him doing those things. So
there's got to be at some point where it matters, right?
Right. and I'm not saying, I mean, my personal opinion, if I was the NFL, I'd say, okay, you know what, Tyreek Hill, you're cut, man.
Suspended indefinitely.
Right. But we're going to try to get you the help. We're going to give you some parenting classes. We're going to teach you and your fiance, because they have twins on the way. It's not only about this 3-year-old. They have 2 more kids on the way. Mm-hmm. And so something needs to be done. I had somebody say, oh, it's not the society's responsibility to teach people how to be parents. It's their parents' responsibility. Well, their parents failed. We can already see that. I mean, when you look at the dynamics, I know we're getting into a whole new topic here, But I mean, this is very passionate for, I think, both of us when it comes to seeing these kind of things happen in the NFL, especially. And I mean, it hits home for a lot of things for me with having a kid. I have a kid that's pretty much that age that his kid is at. And I can't imagine ever doing that to my kid.
Yeah, it's gross. It's vile. That's the word. Vile.
Right.
But, what was not vile was the Chiefs' day 2 of the NFL draft. There's a nice transition for you. That way we can get out of this touchy subject.
There you go.
But Mecole Hardman, absolute speedster from Georgia, kind of plays that vertical threat, but also a gadget player that Tyreek Hill would play, preparing for life after Tyreek Hill. So that's I think the fits there, but it's, they're essentially having to use a pick on a lesser version of an elite player they already have because of the situation. So, you have to look at it with that. It's hard to not look at it with that lens. So that kind of drops it for me, but I absolutely love the next 2 picks for them on the defensive line. Juwan Thornhill from Virginia, who's actually listed at cornerback. He played safety at Virginia, played some cornerback as well, but I don't know if you're calling the pounding the table or the building the Broncos. We did the mock draft with everybody in it, and we took Amani Hooker over Juwan Thornhill. And I just got to say, I mean, as much as I'm an Iowa guy at heart, I think Juwan Thornhill was the right guy to go there, personally. And especially looking at where the NFL took him as well. It's maybe a little hindsight bias there, but I think you guys should have listened to me.
Maybe.
I guess we'll see on that.
He's a good pick there for them. Exactly what they needed of that cornerback safety kind of hybrid player to add to their secondary. I mean, did you hear Keenan Allen's conversation today? They're asking about the Chiefs and what they can do to beat the Chiefs. And he said something about, our wide receiver room was watching tape, or we saw the list of the Chiefs secondary, and I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to say anymore. And it's not a great secondary, but adding a guy like Thornhill helps a little bit. I mean, I don't know how he's going to be rookie year, but at least he's a pretty talented player, fits position of need, fits value, all those kind of things. The AFC West did pretty darn good in this draft. Yeah. They really did. You see a lot of players that we really liked, that we've talked about a lot on this podcast. And I mean, we've talked about Kalen Saunders a lot when the Senior Bowl is going on and what this guy was doing, just destroying people, really thinking he'd be a great player to add for the Broncos and be able to have some versatility there on the defensive line, all those kind of things. And so, yeah, they really nailed this second day of the draft. Hardman fits well with what they need to keep that offense where it's at. I do wonder a little bit, because he is so raw. He's only played wide receiver for 2 years, how much of an impact he can make year one. I mean, they're going to have gadget plays for him, but you look at even like Tyreek Hill, his rookie year, he had less than 600 yards receiving. Now, he's a huge impact player on returns. I mean, let's not try to sugarcoat how much of an impact he was still able to make as a rookie. But as a receiver, he wasn't actually that great of a receiver. He was still pretty raw and has grown as a receiver since then. And I think Hardman's going to have kind of that same trajectory that they're going to hope that he does. So, I mean, they'll have plays designed for him, but I'm not sure he's going to be a full-time starter on the offense like Tyreek Hill is. I think he's more going to be a special teams guy with some gadget plays thrown in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that, the secondary still needs help linebacker core. And how many picks over the past few years have the Chiefs thrown day 2 at the defensive line? I mean, seriously, a lot. Chris Jones, absolute hit, ballpark, do a stadium ovation, flip the bat, do whatever you want there. That was a slam dunk. But then you got Tano Passanio, who hasn't done much yet, absolute freak, but not really shown out on the football field. Breeland Speaks, Derek Noddy, and now Keelan Saunders. So it's a pretty packed with day 2 picks there. We'll see if anything comes of that, but I don't think they've really hit on those picks so far. But then, Rashard Fenton, athletic guy, South Carolina cornerback. I personally, not great, but, you're taking a cornerback in the 6th round. What do you expect? I do really like Darwin Thompson, though. He's a guy that I'm going to be watching him closely the preseason and training camp and whatnot, because I think he is a fantasy football sleeper, because I really did like what I saw from him at Utah State. He's a very thick back, kind of smaller, but explosive. So he's a guy that I'm very much intrigued by. And, running back is very much a system position. Some people might hate to hear that, but, if you got great guys around you, it's the reason the Chiefs are able to plug and play all these different guys without much of a drop off. So especially with that Chiefs system, with how they open it up. So I'm looking out for him. I think Darwin Thompson's got a chance to be an impact player year one for them. If there's any position that, can be an impact player with a late round or undrafted position year one, it's got to be running back.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, with the few picks that they had, especially, half their draft being 6th round and on, and I thought they did pretty good here. They added some talent, some guys that can be day one impact players, and keep their team pretty strong. I mean, obviously, if they're going to lose Tyreek Hill, that's going to be a huge blow. We're talking about maybe the biggest playmaker in the entire NFL. You don't replace that. I'm sorry. I know they still have Patrick Mahomes. They'll still be a good team, but that's a big blow for them. But I think that they've added at least a little bit to that defense to give them some players. They're still not going to be a great defense. They still have some huge holes on that defense for sure. But, they're going to win a lot of shootouts too.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you there. Now we're going to do one little thing before we get out of here. But, touching on each class, Raiders, overall grade for the class, what would you give them?
I would give them probably a B-.
Okay, and how come?
I feel like they could have done a lot more in that first round.
Yeah.
Clelin Ferrell, he might be fit with what they want to do, but like I said, I think that's a reach there at 4. When I'm at 4, I'm looking at a guy that I think can really take over my entire organization, like be the face of the organization. You're thinking Von Miller kind of player, and I just never see that with Ferrell. Then running back, Jonathan Abram, good, not great player. Trayvon Mullen there at the top of the draft. I thought they did so much more 4th round and on than they did 2nd round and earlier.
Yeah.
So I can't give it higher than a B- for me. What about you?
I would probably give it a B+. And it's kind of how do you want to grade this? It depends on our system here. The Raiders, they had a lot of picks. So just by attrition, they're going to walk away with more talent, Like you have more chances, more lottery tickets. So if we're looking at it as far as for pick, I'd probably give them a C+ to a B-. But with the amount of talent they have, the amount of high picks that they walked away with, probably a B+, A-. My favorite pick would probably be Foster Moreau. My least favorite pick would probably be Josh Jacobs. What about your favorite and least favorite?
Probably favorite for them would be maybe Isaiah Johnson.
Okay.
Just, again, that high upside kind of player there in the 4th round. I think it was Benjamin Albright talked about 1st round, you're looking for starters. 2nd and 3rd round, you're looking for those guys that can start year 2, 3 in the NFL. And 4th round on, you're looking for those high athletic profiles that maybe could turn into something. And I think Isaiah Johnson really fits that to a T. Just a guy with huge upside that I think we could look back and he could be one of those guys that when they do the redo draft in like 3 years, maybe he gets into that 1st round kind of conversation because he just athletically comes into his own of becoming a football player. So that's one I really like. I'm with you on the Josh Jacobs. That's just not a good pick there.
Running back, man.
There's been other drafts where they didn't have a running back picked in the 1st round, and I would have had those running backs rated higher than Josh Jacobs.
It doesn't make sense for a multitude of reasons. But moving on, we got to keep on pushing forward here. The Chargers, I would give them a solid A-, probably an A considering where they were picking and everything. And walking out with Tillery and Adderley, great. Probably my favorite pick would be Tillery because that pass rush synergy, he's going to have one-on-one opportunities and between Ingram and Bosa, it's going to be a nightmare. It really is going to be hard to play them, and they got a lot of good weapons on that back end. Derwin James and now Adderley. My least favorite pick probably Trey Pipkins, just because a very small school offensive tackle. Yeah, if he's your guy, I get it, but still, I don't love it there. So, what about you? Grade for them and favorite and least favorite pick.
I'll give them an A.
Okay.
It's hard for me with those. I can't get past those first 2 picks. They are just such perfect value and need picks for them.
And they're picking 28. That's
right.
We've seen the Broncos pick at 28, and you're walking out with like the Bradley Chubbs, the Shane Ray types, which they got a chance to be good. They can impact and whatnot. Hopefully, they grow better than those 2 guys did at Denver. Maybe you blame that on coaching. That's another argument entirely or discussion. But the picking 28 and getting those 2 guys, they could have been picking 15 or even 12, and walked away with both those 2 guys. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good value. That makes sense.
Right. So favorite pick, Adderley's got to be my favorite pick. Just again, adding him to Derwin James. You allowed Derwin James to play his most. I mean, he can play anywhere, but when you really get him to this true strengths of his game, oh my goodness, he's going to be a wrecking force here in the AFC West. It wouldn't surprise me if he's in that Defensive Player of the Year consideration this year. And then least favorite pick, Easton Stick. I mean, they really got to start trying to find a quarterback to develop behind Rivers, and Easton Stick is not the guy. I mean, this was not a great quarterback class by any means, but there was other guys that had higher upside that actually can play from the pocket, that can make a lot of the throws that you're looking for, and Easton Stick is not that guy. So unless they have this idea that he's really going to turn into something else for them, like you said, slot receiver maybe, and become that kind of impact player or just a gadget player for him, I really don't get the pick at all. I really thought this is a guy that's going to go undrafted. Maybe some team picks him up to bring him into camp, but I just never even saw him making a roster when it comes to the NFL. And when you take him 5th round, that's a pretty big statement from a quarterback, I would say. Doesn't mean they're going to keep him on the roster, but they're going to give him every chance to make it, and I just can't see it.
Yeah, no, I do not disagree with you at all there. And I'm going to tell Drew Tranquil that you didn't have him as your favorite pick. He's going to unmatch you on Tinder.
I know. It's one of those, I had him graded about that area, 4th, 5th round. And so it fits where I thought he was going to go. Adderley, I thought he would go high 2nd, late 1st. So to get him late 2nd round, that's such good value.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and he's a perfect fit. I mean, literally, both those guys are perfect fits. Gosh darn it. And then the Chiefs, I'd probably give their draft probably a C+. However, I'd give it a solid B if you take into account they got Frank Clark. Yeah, that he's legitimately a top 15 edge rusher, still young, and a perfect scheme fit for them. My least favorite pick for them, Mecole Hardman. I felt like that's definitely a projection there, a reach, and I think I'd have been much more comfortable with him 2 rounds later. But speed kills. Speed gets guys drafted, unless your name's Emmanuel Hall for some reason, which I still don't get. But that's another discussion. And my favorite pick would probably be the next one they made, Juwan Thornhill from Virginia, who I think is super versatile and has tremendous upside to play a number of spots on that defensive backfield.
I'm going to give him I'll give them a B- as well, because they did take two players I really, really like in this draft. And Kalen Saunders, I mean, he's my favorite pick. I just think him and Jones being there in the middle of that defense, man, that's a lot to handle. I mean, they might not have great outside pressure, but those two guys working on the inside, I think they could make a really good combo between the two of them. And I think he's got no better teacher than Jones to teach him how to work there on the inside. Worst pick, I'm going to go with Mecole Hardman as well. I mean, if there's a team that he can go out there and have a lot of success, it's probably the Chiefs. I mean, so when I'm looking at fit, it's hard for me to disagree with that kind of pick. But again, when you're talking about 2nd round pick, there's just a ton of wide receivers that I would have had much higher on my board than him. I mean, you're looking at Paris Campbell went after him. So if you're really looking for a speed guy that can really match up well with Mahomes, I mean, that would be a guy I would trust a lot more. That's shown at least a lot of production there in college. And I just think that would have been a great pairing. Even DK Metcalf. I mean, we can talk about what in the world with him falling clear to the end of the 2nd round, but you're talking about speed, height, weight. I mean, all those kind of things. I know he's not the most agile guy moving side to side, that kind of thing, but you want a guy that can get deep and just pretty much have Mahomes throw it up to him. That would have been a guy that I probably would have taken ahead of of Hardman. So other players I had rated much higher that still even fit what they're looking for in a wide receiver. And so I just can't like that pick.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering your Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.